In order to approach optimal nutrition, I have tried a few different things. This is the latest iteration. What if you had a shake and at least parts of the shake were ingredients that were determined by an algorithm that has the feedback loop that is your blood draw, and then the parameters, or rather the blood markers, it gets and interprets and then recommends things accordingly. This is now what not I have built, but what I'm just using. This shaker is a shaker I have used for the last few months in order to get a curd shake in the morning. This curd shake is something I make the evening prior. It consists out of 500 grams of curd plus milk plus ice cubes in order to reduce the temperature, in order to increase basically how long it lasts. So now we go into the app I am using and the service I am using. So I did my first blood draw in December, and now ideally you would do this in a higher frequency, maybe even monthly, maybe it could be quarterly, maybe it could be yearly. Now you would determine either all of the markers that the company says they are useful, or you would select a few. I selected a few, and this cost me around 60 euros. Now the data has been back, and I also got a biological age as a result of this. My biological age is actually much younger than my chronological age is actually much younger than my resulting biological age. Nonetheless, I will now continue, which is a sentence that didn't make any sense. So Inside Tracker is loading, and it usually loads a bit. Now, here is the idea now. This shake is something I already drink anyway. I will probably have to remove some of the curd because it already is kind of very fitting, not fitting, but it barely fits in there and still is shakeable. So you can hear it a little bit, but I would have to remove more of the curd anyway. So the curd itself has 60 grams of protein, 12 grams per 100 gram. Additionally, the protein from the milk comes in. Now, you also might argue that if evolution would have to come up with, let's say, ideal nutrition that is transferable from one entity to another entity, or from one animal to another animal, it would come up with something like milk. So by using milk and by leveraging that other animals, in this case, are producing milk that we even can drink still, because of this lactose thing, where the lactose tolerance does not turn off. So basically people who are intolerant to lactose seem to be what evolution has meant, and the other one were selected for an evolutionary advantage that was then drinking milk and benefiting from the availability of milk, and also maybe of the different things that milk provides compared to just eating raw broccoli all the time. Now, if we go into Inside Tracker, then we can see three different screens. The first one is the home, then we have action, plan, and then we have my results. It also shows you a few tags, and it also asks these questions, and I do not know how to turn them off because, well, I do not want to answer them. Because if I track a few habits in here and a few habits in my habit tracker, then it's all confused. Now there are a few habits. Inside Tracker tracks automatically because you can connect either Apple Health or Garmin at this point in time. So we can see that I have a wellness score which is not that high because I had blood markers that were not that good. And then I have on this card here my goal, which is to reduce my inner age, which seems to be the most reasonable. Previously I had it on strength age. Now, as I had it on strength age, it recommended different things to me, like taking creatine, which I already have been taking, and I also noticed that I did not input creatine as something that was in the questionnaire on the website. So the app is slightly different from the website. On the app you might have a few more things, like the connection to Garmin, which you can manage in here, and also a few other things, whereas on the website it is more the food recommendations and the blood work. Now, if we go into the action plan, then it shows a few different things. Now, these different things can be sorted by sport, by nutrition, by supplements, and by the last thing, which is behaviors, I guess. Now, it's called a lifestyle. The first thing is called exercise, then we have nutrition, supplement, and that's it. Or you have just all of them. If you change your goal, the recommendations also change. If you change your blood work significantly, up to the threshold where then these change, then they also change. Now I have set inner age. It seems to be the most reasonable and also the most simple goal in order to reduce my age and basically to increase my life and ideally also health span. Now, I have selected a few out of these recommended actions. Now, I selected 10. Previously, I had a few less, but now I am trying a little bit more again. As it, again, seems to me that this is something that is very useful. Having Inside Tracker and knowing, so Inside Tracker knows a few things about me. Inside Tracker also has my blood work. So if you think about yourself as a machine, then your blood is kind of the machine oil that has all of these different potential error messages or potential good messages in there. Similar to a car where you plug in and then you have the readout. It's kind of similar with blood work. Now, of course, you can also diagnose things via another way, via basically a way that would be not seamless, but without piercing the skin. So you can already measure blood pressure on the Galaxy Watch, for example, but only in a single setting. There have already been blood pressure measurement monitors that are continuously that have been also available already, but just not in these watches. I think Apple currently is actually working on a continuous blood pressure monitor, or maybe it's just a single one. But maybe they're also working on it, because they are making the Apple Watch. So it would be reasonable that they are working on a few things like blood glucose measurement, ideally continuously. Samsung, for example, has been reported for years to also work on blood glucose measurement through the skin, basically, but it seems to have not worked out so far. And of course, they also have to get clearance from these different governmental agencies that kind of quality control these devices. Now, I already can get a lot of things measured on Garmin, for example, such as my respiratory rate, such as an estimate to my VO2 max, such as my resting heart rate as a readout, such as my HOE. But overall, it seems still that blood work seems to get basically an additional layer of information in, and this is currently seems to be kind of a way in order to get this. Now, if we again take a look into Inside Tracker, I will now first show you the My Results page. In it, you see that you have these different blood markers, and then you can go into them, and also it gives you recommendations. So it shows you the history, for example. This is my latest value in terms of what is this albumin, and I only have one, and that's it. Now, there also might be like additional recommendations, and in the recommendations you can also again see different things. So if there is something where something else is related, then it shows you actually what is related. So for example, this is hemoglobin, HbA1c, and the hemoglobin A1c, that's the proper name. The short name is then HbA1c. Also has an impact on my inside age, so it actually shows that it has an impact that is slightly worse. So it gives me 0.7 additional years. And you can also see additional things. You can theoretically also upload your DNA. If that is something you also want to do, then it would also kind of base the recommendations also on your DNA. Does that change the recommendations? I don't know. But if you happen to have a certain sickness or something else which you otherwise could not put in the recommendations, or if you happen to have diabetes and something like this, maybe not from your DNA, then it would also maybe adapt something to something like this. I don't know if you can actually put in different diagnoses and then get different recommendations. You can put in, for example, different eating patterns, nutritional patterns. I have put in Mediterranean and ketogenic, which seems to mostly be the thing that I want to do. Now, you can also go on inner age, and then you see that maybe your inner age is a little bit too high, which then would be not too good. Now, in the action plan now, and this is what I will come back to with this shake here. In the action plan, it recommends actions as well. So all of it are behaviors, because something you eat is also kind of a behavior. You are doing the thing that is eating the food. Now, in the beginning, it says an impact, so it gives you an impact score, and this has a 10 impact. That's the maximum. And then it also has these other recommendations which have a lower impact. Now, I chose a few actions. We can actually go onto changing the goal. So I could change the goal to strength, something else, or like live better, live well. We can actually click on it and see what goals are available, but usually the app crashes. So, I thought it would not crash, but it did crash again. So I open up the app again, and now the idea is that if I take these recommendations, and I take just the recommendations that are nutritional, so either supplements or things that I can eat, and then I take all of these, and I already drink this shake in the morning. Then I remove a little bit of curd out of it. then because of the milk and because of the galactose, so milk sugar in this, what I then can potentially do is just drink all of the recommended nutrition in this shake here. So in part, this shake is then so this is also a protein shake, and it also seems to be the case that if I switch in between endurance and strength workouts, roughly, not every single day, but throughout the week. Which means that sometimes I have a day where there are two. So on Saturday, for example, I have a circuit workout where I do random resistance training, and then on Friday I also have resistance training. Nonetheless, there is kind of this pattern in there. Now, what I've also realized or noticed is that for the strength training, this seems to satiate me. Also maybe because of the casein in the curd, which seems to be something that satiates you a little bit longer compared to, for example, a whey protein shake. Now, you can also get all of the ingredients of this shake up until now in the supermarket. Curd, milk. So it's basically something that is already based on the evolutionary Mealshake, and then you just alter it slightly. So the curd is slightly altered, and then you put these different components of milk together in a new kind of way, which is then a curd shake, which then has more protein and less fat compared to normal milk, and also has a consistency that is a little bit more like food. Now, if I take all of the nutritional actions right now, and we can actually go into the mix up your routine, because the ones that are activity based are then visible, not visible, but it is visible when these are automatically tracked. So for example, we can take a look at today. Today I did air biking, and I did 43 minutes of air biking, which is 500 calories of air biking calories on the air bike. Now, this apparently has met my goal because I also cycled to the gym, and I also went back from the gym. It actually says spinning. So all of these three combined were enough to meet my cardio. So our aerobic routine in this case is just whatever is not strength training, and I don't know if interval training, for example, might count as aerobic routine. So I don't know which specific exercises do count as aerobic routine. Then there is also the progress your resistance training exercise, which is also automatically tracked. It's not an exercise, it's the recommendation. And you can see that I've been fairly consistent. The Saturday workouts I have to track manually because I do a circuit and I track it through interval tracking in Samsung Health and not through resistance training or strength training as it is called in Samsung. But now, finally, if I go through the nutritional recommendations, then I can see that they have quite an impact. So this one is diversify the plans, is basically eating one veggie day. Now, there's also incorporate more olive oil, which is the recommendation to eat 2 tablespoons, not table, but teaspoons of olive oil in a given day. And this was basically in there all along. So this was a recommendation that was mostly in there even when I had the strength training. It also recommends to eat flax seeds, and this recommendation is 2 tablespoons of flax seeds. At least for me it says this. I think to some part at least the text seems to be AI generated, because sometimes it says because your blood marker is like this and do this. So the text also seems to be slightly individualized. I don't know to which extent this is happening also for other people. And it also says try out a different type of dairy. Here I would like to criticize the naming scheme of these habits, because it's actually not trying out a different type of dairy, but what it actually says if you then are going into the habit, and it also allows you to manually check, and it also says what your DNA says, then it also gives you scientific references, which you then actually could look up, and it also says tell me more. And this is then the text you have to read, and I think this is, I don't know, it seems to be, it's just a very it's a lot of text, and it's not like a bullet point list where, okay, take 2 tablespoons of flaxseed and then you're done for this habit, but it's like more like all of these different things. Of course, often these things are very complex, and it maybe requires an explanatory text in the beginning. Nonetheless, the trying a different type of dairy actually says that you should have 2 servings of dairy products in your day, and the trying out, so I track this as, I mean, what the title says, try out a different type of dairy. But then the question is, what is a different type of dairy? Is it something I haven't eaten in 2 years, or is it something I haven't eaten for 2 days? So there's the question, and also, so what I would like from Inside Tracker is that the habits would be more defined. It's not just a random habit I can check off, because if I don't know if I can check it off, then there is this insecurity, and if there is this uncertainty and uncertainty, then this whole experience gets less beneficial, I think, because then if the lines are not clear cut, if I don't know what to eat, if I don't know what to put in the shake, and if this changes over time, maybe even, then what should I do? And what should I do is usually not a good feeling. So there's also enjoy some dark chocolate, and these are now all the ingredients. Now the dark chocolate is actually also not enjoy some dark chocolate, and in my case this also would be not beneficial, I think, because there is lots of sugar in dark chocolate. And so what it actually also says is that there is an alternative where you can get 1 tablespoon of cacao. I think it is 1. Let's check it again in the Tell Me More. How much chocolate is beneficial? Cacao, and try cacao nibs or 1 teaspoon raw cacao powder. So, if you don't mind the bitter taste, try cacao nibs. Also, you can get the same benefits from 1 tablespoon of unsweetened cocoa powder. So, first it says 1 teaspoon raw cocoa powder. Maybe it's just something additional. I don't know. But then from tips from a registered dietitian, it says 1 tablespoon. So, now we have all the ingredients. These are recommendations that are made by an algorithm that takes into account my cardiovascular fitness, that takes into account all of the activity data I upload to Garmin, that takes into account all of the different things the Garmin device measures, at least the one that it actually wants, and it seems to be only a few things. So what it does is it gets in all the different activity data, and then selects them, categorizes them based on the categorizations that already have been happening, and then in my results it shows them as activity. So here, for example, we can see that it also pulls sleep data in, and I only slept 6 hours this last night, and therefore everything is in the red. And then we also have, so these are daily values, but you can also get long-term values. So we could, for example, go on, let's go on sleep and REM sleep, and then it shows the average for a given amount of time. So today is very low REM sleep, but you can also click on view history, and in view history it then shows me that over the last year, for example, I had too little REM sleep on average, and not just a little bit too little, but like 10% or 15% too little. And this also is something that is kind of additional to Garmin, let's say, because there is no optimal zone, not really an optimal zone for these different REM sleep phases. It is shown often on the daily, but it is not shown in a graph like this. So in the daily portion, in Samsung Health, for example, you would have a bar, and this bar would be, so this would be normal, and then your bar fills up to here. But you don't have something like this, which I think is also quite useful. Am I willing to pay Inside Tracker for the whole year just to get this insight? Probably not, but I have to pay Inside Tracker at this point in time, so I paid it for 1 year and I see how it goes. But probably I will have another Inside age test in next December, so in this year's December, and I will, if I can, get all the different blood markers, which would cost me 250 euros, which is quite a lot, but then it's also basically my health, and I do have apparently a few things that seem to be optimizable, not specifically the sleep, but much more other things, and therefore, let's get into. Oh yeah, the thing I also wanted to discuss is the other 3 things, which are in this case resting heart rate, not just in this case, but in any case. In this case, or at this point in time, VO2 max actually recently has been added. It first was called VO2 max daily, probably referencing the idea that VO2 max is often just an estimate, in this case from Garmin. And if Garmin measures your VO2 max on a given day, then it says, okay, your resting heart rate was like this, we measured the elevation between this and this, and usually you have to run on kind of an even ground for the estimate to work, similar with my Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. And then if you ran, I think, for 20 minutes on an even ground, it gives you a VO2 max estimate. It does not work with walking, even though with other trackers it seems also to work with walking, but some people don't run. So therefore, this is actually kind of a weekly value, because I am only doing 1 weekly run where this actually would qualify. And now I have this in here, it's 56, and then I also have these 2 other things. My deep sleep apparently also was nice, even though I only slept 6 hours. Which means that if I sleep 6 hours, then maybe on average my REM sleep is off, but maybe it also does not mean this, and I had just luck this day. Now, it takes all of this data into account, and it knows that I want to reduce my age, and then gives me something. And this something is basically all of the different things I now intend to put into the shake. And because it's actually now time for me to eat my first meal, even though it kind of makes sense, I think, to standardize this also, because otherwise I am pushing constantly. But the problem is also I wanna focus on the thing I am doing, and once I eat, I can focus usually less on the thing I am doing. There is just a drive. There seems to be a drive that builds up over the fasting, and especially if you also worked out a little bit, in this case in the morning, and if the workout did not require too much after fuel, so to speak, I can push the fast longer and longer, and that's also what I have been doing for the last years, basically usually intermittent fasting, which meant that I didn't have breakfast and I had usually a late lunch and then a dinner. As I mentioned, maybe in other videos, I already tried OMAD, eating once in a single day, but usually it seems to be the case that my body is not able to digest, and it doesn't want all the food at once. That's kind of the maybe simple gist I could summarize all of these experiences. So the idea now is to get this shake and then to add all of the different ingredients. Now, I already had a few different ingredients at home. It also says add garlic to your routine. I don't know if you actually saw this already. So we maybe, okay, so here we have the flaxseed, and the garlic is 1 gram. 1 gram of garlic is about 1/3 of a teaspoon. It seems to be this way. Now I also have a creatine spoon, which is 3.3 grams, and assuming they have a similar density, so the powder is not heavier, with 1 gram, for example. Of course, 1 gram is always 1 gram. It was just a little joke here. Now, I will now, so I already have the 1 tablespoon of cacao in here. I already have the garlic in there. I do not have a few of these other things. We can actually take a look at the other recommendations it actually would give me. If I take a look at my action plan, then I can basically make them available and not available with this green button. And it actually would also say that I should start taking a probiotic. It also says I should take an ALA supplement. But with these additional supplements, I was wondering if I, for example, buy now all of these supplements, and then if I change the goal, it doesn't say that I should take these supplements. Now, the basis mostly of these recommendations is probably the blood work. And if your VO2 max changes from 56 to, in a few months, 57 maybe, or 53, then probably the recommendations will not change that much, because also with the olive oil and other things, it seems to be that these are recommendations that apply to many people, even though, so they apply to, not even though, they seem to apply to many people. And therefore, they might also stay fairly consistent if you switch your goal. But taking creatine, for example, or taking ashwagandha, as it recommended previously, and it still recommends this, but it also recommended something else, I think. Maybe it was Rhodolia rosea, maybe it was something else when I hit the strength goal. The idea on my side was that maybe Inside Tracker and the whole kind of longevity thing is not what I'm trying to do, or I have to do at this point in time, because I have to build my cardiovascular fitness up until the max and also my strength up until the max, because then it declines. And maybe the optimization here is not aligned. So basically I would, even though I just want to optimize for longevity, the vector that Inside Tracker would use would be slightly off. This was a suspicion I had. I don't exactly know on which assumption this is based upon, or based on. It also says I should take a psyllium supplement, eat probiotic food every day. In this case, I opted for adopting this with just making something up, which is 3 forks of sauerkraut, which seem to be probiotics, so it is mentioned there. These are the foods you can eat in order to fulfill this habit. And it also would be nice if I could input the foods I have eaten into my fitness pal, and then it would either via Garmin transfer this data, or just connecting it to my fitness pal. I mean, it's an app that says, okay, food recommendations, but then it doesn't track it automatically with my fitness pal. This would be one of the next steps, maybe, for Inside Tracker to take. Of course, there would be other things you might want to connect to an app like this. But for now, let's go through the additional recommendations. Aim for veggie variety. I just didn't opt for this because it just says, okay, vegetables are a great source, and then tell me more, and then okay, I probably eat lots of these vegetables, but I just don't have any recommendation in here that is concrete and precise enough. It is just saying, okay, a typical serving is 1 cup of raw leafy green vegetables. I often don't have raw leafy green vegetables, or 1/2 a cup of fresh or frozen vegetables. What is even a cup? And I don't know. Why do the recommendations have to be with imperial units and also cups and ounces? what should I do with these? I mean, it does recognize that I am not in the US, even though I'm using the English language. And, well, start taking this other extract, start taking, schedule your workouts for 24 hours apart. This was also something I tried to do. I tried to do this exactly. But how do I track this? How do I make sure I don't cheat on this habit by maybe starting one day at this hour and then an hour later? What is the deviation I can allow that makes sense still? Is it plus minus 10 minutes? Is it plus minus 5 minutes? What if the workout is a little bit longer? Is it then that I have to have 24 hours apart? Do I just randomly check this? Oh yeah, this will be fine. So because the recommendation is not granular enough, I think, not specific enough, I cannot track this. It would be a good recommendation, but I found that I just could not track it. I mean, what is 24 hours apart? It could say, for example, 22 hours between the workouts. But 24 hours apart is not really possible, because if you start a workout and then you wait a day, it's 24 hours later, and then you would start the next workout. So in between the workouts, there cannot be, well. Take a plant sterol supplement, it also says. Then it also says drink oolong tea, but I don't know what oolong tea is and I never have heard of it. I could search it up on Amazon. Try out a different type of dairy, which is actually the thing I also told you, that it is not try out a different type of dairy, but it would only optimize it. So it says actually, keep enjoying dairy twice a day. Mix up dairy to maximize the benefits. So as I didn't reach through this properly, I did not track this habit because I didn't try out a different type of dairy every single day. And even if I did, then after a week, the different type of dairy would be a usual type of dairy. Then start tracking Pilates. Practicing Pilates would also be something that's worth, but it also is quite unspecific. And this is, I think, kind of a problem with this. This, for example, is a little bit better. Continue to get sunshine, continue to spend 20 minutes in direct sunshine daily. This is a specific recommendation I can follow, and therefore I track it. Because I also track it with my habit tracker, I can also then double check, and I also want to track it in here because otherwise I don't know what to track out of all of these things that are in this recommendation. It also says take a resveratrol supplement, practice mindfulness daily, an ashwagandha supplement. I actually looked up resveratrol. It would cost a little bit, probably seems to be available. Enjoy some dark chocolate, take a 5-minute walk, take a vitamin K2 supplement, play games for brain health, reduce screen time. I mean, reduce screen time is also just, it's a super nice and feel-good habit. Cut out 1 hour of screen time or reduce your screen time to 2 hours per day. Now, I could reduce it to 2 hours. But what if I'm working on a notebook? What if I'm working on a computer? How does anyone in the modern age how is anyone in the modern age able to cut his screen time to 2 hours a day? I mean, it's just not. And if I cut it by 1 hour, then if I cut it by 1 hour and then the next day I cut it by 1 hour, then after a couple of days there is no screen time left. So, well, frustration. Now, I took all of the recommendations that I actually have available, and they are also selected because these are actually things I can quantify, and then I put them all into here, and now I'm the 4 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, and then I will put as much of the drink in here as I can. So this is what ground flaxseed looks like. It actually does not taste that bad. So yesterday I was quite hungry and I actually ate just the semi-ground flaxseed because I actually got it from the supermarket. Actually, there is a spoon in here, and this spoon is, I think, 3.5 grams. It actually has also this thing on here, and it says per 5 gram serving. So this is apparently a 5 gram scoop, which now means I have a 5 gram scoop and also a 3.5 gram scoop for the creatine, or it might be the same one, but it might be that they have different densities. I think this is the third one. I probably miscounted because I cannot do 2 things at once. And then this also in here. Now this shaker is, well, it's just a protein shaker. It actually does not matter for the type of video I'm trying to make. Now, I take the shake that is already mixed, and this would be something that I then otherwise would drink, usually after the workout, usually around a couple of hours after. And this is what it looks like, and it actually also tastes very nice, especially if you're hungry. It seems to me, especially since I don't eat any sugar or sweeteners otherwise, or let's just say something, not something with added sugar. So of course there is also sugar in milk, but if we call just all things that are kind of a very simple carbohydrate sugar, then maybe also nobody is helped by this. So now there is kind of a little bit still left, so I might have to reduce the curd I put into one shaker. Currently it's very nice because I just put one whole pack of curd in here, and then I add the milk and the ice cubes. So there's quite a bit left, but I also so I want to leave a little bit of room in here. I could put in actually a little bit more, and this would then be my first meal of the day. But simultaneously, it would also be the meal of the day that was basically kind of recommended by an algorithm that actually considers my blood work. And now the question obviously is in which frequency you do the blood work. I already mentioned it. Maybe if I do this once a year, then it costs me 250 plus whatever Inside Tracker costs at the moment. So it's probably 250 plus maybe 40 euros for the Inside Tracker calculation, the Inside Age calculation, and then another. I don't know how. I actually can't remember how much it cost, but it cost probably quite a little bit of euros. Now, one problem is obviously if you put dry things into the bottom and then liquid things on top, then the problem is that it doesn't mix. So also for mixing food powder, it usually is recommended to start with the liquid and then add the dry things. But because I already had this shake in here, and also I had it already for me with one day, I had to drink this right now, because otherwise it probably will get bad soon. Now I will shake this a bit and stir it up a bit and then return. So I put a spoon in there. It still is a little bit on the ground, and it also seems to be not sufficiently liquid enough. So this is more kind of a pudding consistency. Obviously not something you can drink, therefore I will be adding a little bit more milk. But then of course this also means that the composition of this whole thing is changed. But because I added a lot of powder to something that already was kind of almost unshakable, as Tony Robbins would say, I then have to add milk. Now, this is now what it looks like. I still have a little bit on the bottom, a little bit, maybe most of it. I added another portion of milk, but I probably will shake this till infinity. What I also have to add here is something else. And this something else is that you already are relying, or I am already relying on lots of algorithms in order to make my food choices. My body, for example, figured out today that I did cardiovascular training instead of resistance training. It then searched through all of the different things I ate in the last days that basically, due to a kind of availability bias, or heuristic rather, are then things I probably have access to. And then it recommends these things to me as the rational agent sitting inside my mind. And then it recommends, oh, I like to eat pancakes. And this is basically getting real-time data from me, inside of me, and puts it into a form that I can understand. Eat pancakes now. I like to eat pancakes now. And this here would be something that has basically an interval of 1 year. A frequency of update of 1 year, apart from the things it gets from Garmin Health and so on and so forth. So one also, I think, might be well advised, at least in my case. I think I am well advised to just further and further and in more granular detail would try to cipher or decipher what my body is actually trying to tell me. And especially in the last years, mostly in the last years, I would say, I began to notice that if I remove all of the artificial layers that are layered on top of making hunger an algorithm that is not working properly, then it seems to be the case that my hunger is actually driving me towards the things that make kind of sense. Basically, given that I select good foods, then my body will drive me towards the right foods. Sometimes out of the option of tuna, cottage cheese, something else, eggs, I don't know. It recommends these things. Not all the time, but usually it's like, okay, now eat this, now eat this, now eat this. And it's actually quite specific, I would say. This might sound a little bit woo-hoo or woo-woo, but nonetheless, in terms of how updating this is, it's real-time data from you basically all the time. And if you then don't drink water for the next 5 hours, then the real-time data actually increases marginally and gives you the feeling of thirst. How ridiculous is this? And compare this to the best technology we have right now, which is getting blood drawn, which is a fairly invasive process, and you can only get blood drawn if you pay 250 euros, or with Inside Tracker in the US, like 3 times as much, and then you get possibly a few recommendations. Now, of course, your body doesn't know all the foods that exist out there, because if it didn't have access to them in the past, then maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the food database of my body or other bodies is, but it seems to be the case that things I've eaten are usually foods that are in this recommendation database, but there also seems to be this availability bias, maybe with an algorithm even that basically says that it's not linear in terms of the time, but it's kind of weighted. So maybe the last things are weighted more compared to something I ate 10 years ago and probably don't have access to right now any longer. It is kind of the end of this. It might be, at least for me, it kind of serves as the first attempt to kind of have an open feedback loop that is basically based on data, and then it improves my nutrition. Of course, it is maybe still not that nice. Maybe it would just, in the future, Inside Tracker would put out a shake, for example. I did not put in the olive oil because I will eat that later on. But this is kind of what it looks like. And I also already drank parts of it. Of course, there is garlic in there. Of course, there is cocoa powder in there. Of course, there might also be, in this case, milk in there. But also the milk and the curd act as the 2 different servings of dairy that it also recommends. So I basically also have this recommendation. It's basically a multitude of recommendations, and it also happened to fit into my existing Mealshake system that consists out of basically 4 shakes. One is for water with electrolytes, one is for shakes. In the beginning of the day, it contains previously the curd shake. Now I call it maybe the intra shake, short for Inside Tracker. And then I basically have optimized nutrition, at least with the frequency of currently 1 year.